Hello, Northside. Welcome to summer. It was so hot outside today, I wore a short sleeve shirt. How many of you wore a short sleeve shirt? Oh, we got 1, 2, 3, maybe 4, 5 out of this whole crowd. Okay. Well, tomorrow's going to be 70, so I'm going to think of something to do outside. Hey, there's a drama presentation tonight, and it is the second graders. So if you have a child or a grandchild who's a zebra, second grader, then you need to head to the drama room all the way down the hall in the safari wing at 7:45. 7:45. You'll have plenty of time to do that. All right. We have one more lesson after this. I appreciate you sharing it with me, sharing your time with me as we study good lessons from bad guys. We're going to be in 2 Kings chapter 11. And yeah, we are going to at least browse through it, half read, half browse through it here in a little bit. So if you want to turn to that and kind of get ready for it, that would be good. Here are the characters in the story tonight. Athaliah. Athaliah was the 7th king or queen of Judah, and she is the bad guy tonight. Somebody asked me, I think it was last week or week before last, somebody came up to me, I think it was Myrna. Is Myrna here? I don't see Myrna. I think Myrna came up to me and said, why are you bringing up all these bad women? There you are, Myrna. Why are you bringing up all these? Why are you picking on the women? She said. And I said, well, shoe fits. There you go. Anyway, Athaliah was the murderous. I don't use that word. I found that in a book. She was the murderous daughter of wicked King Ahab and Queen Jezebel. Jezebel seems to be more popular than Ahab did. She was the wife of King Jehoram of Judah, but she walked in the ways of the house of Ahab. She was of the Israelite nation, division, not of the Judah division. After the death of her husband, Jehoram, King Jehoram, and her other son, and her son, King Ahaziah. Excuse me, we got a bunch of this tonight, so bear with me. Then she seated herself as queen and took the throne of Judah. Now, what's wrong with that? Well, what's wrong with that isn't that God said there can be no queens. They have to all be kings. The problem with that is that the king, the seat of Judah, the king of Judah, that's the line of David. From that is where the Messiah will come from. So it has to be kept right. It has to be kept appropriate. So she did that, and she began her reign after Ahaziah's, that's her child, by the way, died, and she reigned for 6 years. After her reign of 6 years, she was put to death in an insurrection. That's part of what we're going to read about this evening. And that insurrection was led by a priest. So Athaliah is the bad guy. So pay attention to that. All right. Ahaziah was the 6th king of Judah. Now, Ahaziah was the son of King Jehoram and bad gal Athaliah. His reign lasted 1 year. Shortly after his ascension to the throne, he went to help Jehoram, king of Israel, because he had ties via his mom to the division of Israel. And so he went over to help them. He was related, obviously, to the kingly house of Israel through his mom, who was the daughter, as I said, of Jezebel and King Ahab. He was therefore fully in sympathy with Israel politically and religiously. He didn't last very long. The story's not about him. Then we have Joash. Joash was the 8th king. Now remember, Ahaziah was the 6th king. Joash was the 8th king. In between them was Athaliah, the 7th king/queen. Joash was the 8th king of Judah. He was the sole surviving son of King Ahaziah. After the massacre of the royal family, we've got a massacre in this story tonight that was ordered by his grandmother. Josiah was the youngest king to ascend to the throne of Judah at the tender age of 7 years old. Jehosheba was the daughter of King Jehoram. Now we keep talking about Jehoram. She was the sister of King Ahaziah, who lasted 1 year, and the wife of Jehoiada, the priest. Priest is going to come into this pretty soon. He's the hero of the story tonight. After the death of Ahaziah, his mother, Athaliah, as I've said before, made herself queen of Judah and ordered the execution of all the members of the royal family. That's not unusual in life, in history, in the world, but it happened here. So she could claim the throne. However, as we'll read tonight, Jehosheba saved her infant nephew, Jehoash, from the massacre, hid him. We'll talk about that again in a minute. I'm just giving you some hints right now. Excuse me, I had the slides backwards. There she is, right there. Okay, so Jehoiada was a prominent priest of the kingdom of Judah during the reign of Ahaziah, Athaliah, and Joash. He played a pivotal role in protecting and mentoring the young King Joash after the wicked queen Athaliah tried to destroy the royal line of David. Jehoiada helped restore proper worship in the temple and guided Judah to tear down the pagan altars of Baal. So, if I didn't confuse you, because I had a couple of slides backwards there, this is quite a drama, but it's a drama that's important in the history of Israel because it keeps the line of David pure. All right, there's also the Kerites. Now, the Kerites are the king's guards. I'm not going to say anything more about them because there's nothing more to say about them. We'll read about them in the 11th chapter of 2 Kings. All right. Now, let me show you a chart here of, I hope you can see that. Oh, yeah, it's big enough to see. In this chart, on the left-hand side are the kings of Israel. That's the 10 northern tribes. On the right side are the kings of Judah. That's the southern 2 tribes of Judah and Benjamin. Now, under the kings of Israel, I have a red box. You see Ahab, whose wife is Jezebel. You see Ahaziah, the son of Ahab, the king, and then Jehoram, the son of Ahab, or the grandson of Ahab. On the right side, you see the yellow square. Jehoram, or as some versions say, Joram, is the son of Jehoshaphat. We know about Jehoshaphat. And the husband of Athaliah. Athaliah is the bad lady. Then we have Ahaziah, the son of Jehoram and Athaliah. Remember now, Athaliah on top on the right is a daughter of King Ahab and Jezebel from the 10 tribes of Israel. Okay, so she kind of doesn't fit on the right side. And maybe that's one of the motives for causing trouble. I think it was more selfish. Athaliah was the daughter of King Ahab of Israel and Jezebel. And then Joash was the son of Ahaziah, or the grandson of mean lady Athaliah. But you can see in these two boxes how there is relation between the two. Might be a little bit confusing, but it's interesting to know that when a person from the nation of Israel came over because through marriage, and she started causing trouble for the kings of Judah. Long story short, good thing it didn't last. Okay, all right, 2 Kings 11, let's do some browsing here. All right, here we go. When Athaliah, the mother of Ahaziah, saw that her son was dead, remember he's the guy that was king, rightfully king, but only for a year, she proceeded to destroy the whole royal family. So if you think royalty gets all goofed up in the United Kingdom, you're right. It gets goofed up nearly every place it shows its head, and it gets goofed up, of course, in biblical times as well. So she decided to destroy the whole royal family, therefore making herself queen. But remember, she missed the little guy, Joash, the grandson. We'll talk about that in a second. So verse 2, but Jehosheba, the daughter of King Joram and sister of Ahaziah, who was king, the guy that lasted only a year, took Joash, the son of Ahaziah, and stole him away from among the royal princes who were about to be murdered, and they were murdered. She put him and his nurse in a bedroom to hide him from Athaliah, so he was not killed. He remained hidden with his nurse at the temple, that's where the bedroom was, at the temple of the Lord for 6 years while Athaliah ruled the land. So she wiped out the royal family except for her grandson, who was hidden, and she ruled then for 6 years while he was growing up. Verse 4, in the 7th year of Jehoiada, in the 7th year, Jehoiada sent for the commanders of units of 100, the Kerites, and the guards, and had them brought to him at the temple of the Lord. He made a covenant with them and put them under oath in the temple of the Lord. So the priest, Jehoiada, after 6 years of Athaliah's reign, and as Joash is beginning to grow, he starts to make a move to make things right. So he's the priest. He's getting ready to make a move to get things right. And by the way, he and Jehosheba, the relative that saved Joash, are married, husband and wife. All right. So he showed the guards the king's son. He showed them Joash. He commanded them, saying, and here's where it really starts to get good. This is what you're to do. He's making a plot. It's a good plot, but he's making a plot behind the queen's back. This is what you're to do. You who are in the 3 companies that are going on duty in the Sabbath, a third of you guarding the royal palace, a third the sure gate, and a third the gate behind the guards, who take turns guarding the temple. And you who are in the other 2 companies that normally go off Sabbath duty are all to guard the temple of the king. Station yourselves around the king. Who's the king? The little guy, Joash. Each of you with a weapon in hand. Anyone who approaches the ranks is to be put to death. Stay close to the king wherever he goes. So we have this interesting thing happening here. The priest has gathered the guards, and there's 3 companies of 100 of them, so added up, there's 300 of these folks. And he's told them how to guard the king, the little guy, Joash, who really should be king, not Athaliah, how to guard him. And if anybody comes near, take them out. Kill them. Verse 9, the commanders of units of 100 did just as Jehoiada the priest ordered. Good job. If they had not done it, if they had gone loyal to Athaliah, this would not have worked. So we obviously know that God is working in this situation. Each one took his men, those who were going on duty in the Sabbath and those who were going off duty, and he came to Jehoiada the priest. Then he gave the commanders the spears and shields that had belonged to King David and that were in the temple of the Lord. That's kind of interesting. King David was given the sword of Goliath at one point, that it happened to be around the tabernacle. Here we go. Verse 11. The guards, each with weapons in hand, stationed themselves around the king, just as they were supposed to, near the altar and the temple from the south side to the north side of the temple. They're guarding him just as they were supposed to. Verse 12. Jehoiada brought out the king's son and put the crown on him. I don't know what the guards would think about this. I don't know what the people of Judah would have thought about this little 7-year-old guy. But he put the crown on him, and he presented him with a copy of the covenant, and that's what he just made with the guards, and proclaimed him king. They anointed him, and here's the answer to my dilemma. And the people clapped their hands and shouted, "Long live the king." The priest, Jehoiada, had put together a plot to get rid of the queen and anoint the proper king. And were the people going to go along with it? Were the military, were the guards going to go along with it? The answer to that is yes, they did. Verse 13, when Athaliah heard the noise, I don't know where she was, when she heard the noise by the guards and the people, she went to the people at the temple of the Lord, and she looked, and there was the king, standing by the pillar as the custom was. That's probably where she was supposed to stand. The officers and the trumpeters were beside the king, and all the people of the land were rejoicing and blowing trumpets. Then Athaliah tore her robe and called out, "Treason, treason." Now, she's the treason, not them, but she's blaming the priest and Joash and all the guards for treason, but she is the treason. Jehoiada the priest then ordered the commanders of units of 100 who were in charge of the troops, bring her out between the ranks and put to the sword anyone who follows her. So if she had gone between the ranks, her loyal people were to always be with her. Put them to death. For the priest had said she must not be put to death in the temple. of the Lord. So they seized her as she reached the place where the horses entered in the palace grounds, and there she was put to death. Athaliah is gone. Jehoiada then made a covenant between the Lord and the king and people that they would be the Lord's people. He also made a covenant between the king and the people. All the people of the land went to the temple of Baal and tore it down. Good job. Should have done that a long time ago. Don't forget, the people of Israel, I'm using that generically for north and south, when they were together, they adulterated themselves with idols, with gods of the Greeks and the Romans. The priest had them tear the temple of Baal down, and they did it. They smashed the altar and the idols to pieces and killed Mattan, the priest of Baal, in front of the altars. Guys, this is serious. Took the temple of the Baal out and took the priest of Baal out. Then Jehoiada, the priest, posted guards at the temple of the Lord, and he took with him the commanders of hundreds of Karaites. Remember, we had them before, the guards and all the people of the land. And together they brought the king down from the temple of the Lord and went to the palace, entering by the way of the gate of the guards. The king then took his place on the royal throne, little 7-year-old guy. All the people of the land rejoiced, and the city was calm, because Athaliah had been slain, and the sword, with the sword at the palace. Josiah was 7 years old when he began to reign. There are a lot, I got to thinking, how many bad guys are there in the Bible? Well, there's tons. A lot of bad guys in the Bible. Athaliah, Myrna, was a bad gal. And bad came to ruin via one of the priests of God, priests of Judah, with God's blessings. Took Athaliah down and restored the line of David in Judah. All right, let's look at some good lessons from bad Athaliah. Make sure your ambitions line up with God's desire for you. Now, we know that when the 10 called Israel separated from the 2 called Judah, we know that both had difficulties, both had bad kings, and Israel had a few good kings at the top. But Israel at the top also opened worship to idols, opened worship to things other than our God. And they kept going, and they kept going, and they kept going until in 722 AD, the Assyrians came and took them away. I usually say never to be seen again. I don't know. Some of them may have stayed. But because God was intending to bring the Messiah through the line of David, it was important then that the line of David, kingship of David, continues on until we bring into place the Messiah. Not on that physical throne, but bring him through the line of David. So Israel, the 10, were done. And it was up now to the lower, the Judah and Benjamin, mostly Judah, to take care of business and bring it on. So Israel had ambitions that were not part of God's plan. Judah had a lot of ambitions that were not part of God's plan. But they also had some ambitions that were a part of God's plan. So it was a conundrum. But through Judah, God's desires were finally done, even after they went into captivity for 70 years. So make sure your ambitions line up with God. Make sure that the things you desire line up with God. I think in the world we live in today, I think we try to put things in separate boxes. This is my job. This is my friends. This is my recreation. This is my God. This is my family. When God should rule in all of that, whether it be our jobs, our family, our recreation, or whatever. That was one of the problems that both Judah and Israel had, is they kept their ambitions for themselves in so many ways. Make sure your ambitions line up with God's desires for you. Athaliah, the power-grabbing queen, reaps what was sown, what she sowed. What did she sow? Well, when she took over as queen, she did so by killing all the royal family. What happened to her afterwards? She was killed as well. She reaps what she sows. She took out the royal family to get what she wanted, and then God, through the priest, took her out to get what he wanted. Power grabbing reaps what it sows. And it happens in our lives as well. We have to be very careful about grabbing power. I think I told you one time about the story of, and this is kind of a power thing and kind of not. I have a real good friend. One of my best buddies in high school's dad was a baker, and he made those little dinner rolls, little round dinner rolls, and he was like a foreman and had about 10 people, Bond Bakery downtown Oklahoma City, and they made those little dinner rolls. He did that, forever. And Bond Bakery kept coming to him and saying, Mac, you're doing a great job. We would like you to step up and be over several. And he said, aren't I doing a good job? Yes, you're doing a great job. Why then do you want to move me? He had no aspirations to have, and I know we don't always refer to it that way, but he had no aspirations to have power over the other divisions within the bakery. He was doing a good job, and he just wanted to do it. Sometimes we have to learn those lessons. Power grabbing is not always what we think it is or what we want it to be. Power grabbing also reaps what it sows. Be very careful. Pursuing one's own self-seeking ambition may result in fighting against God. We're always asking people, especially younger people, what do you want, or what do you want to be, or what do you want? Of course, we have lists of things that we want. Be careful that we don't fight against God with those. Be careful that we don't put those in first place over God. Be careful that our self-seeking doesn't replace God in our lives or in the things that we do. Be careful with our self-seeking. I know we have things, we want to graduate, we want to get married, that's all good. Make sure those don't supersede God or we'll be fighting against God. Not good. Not good at all. Let's think about it. Where do you find the vicious character of Athaliah today? Where do you find that? Well, it's pretty easy to say that it probably runs fairly prevalent in politics around the world. And it's always been that way. As far as I know, probably always will be. You want to be in power, you take out the people that are below you. Be very careful how we bring that concept down to our own personal lives. Make sure that our character is not vicious in getting what it wants. Make sure that humility rules our character and not vicious takeover like Athaliah. Make sure that what we do in our lives honors God. How can we determine whether our ambitions are God-directed or not? That's a good question. It's a question all of us should ask, no matter where we are in life. We should constantly ask ourselves that question. Look at Matthew chapter 6. I'll read it for you. Verse 33. Matthew 6 is part of the Sermon on the Mount of Jesus. So all red letter, 5, 6, 7. Verse 33 says, "But seek first the kingdom and his righteousness, and all these things will be given to you as well." So, what do you want? What is it that you want? What shall we eat? What shall we drink? What shall we wear? And so Jesus is challenging the people that are listening to him really about the daily concerns of life. No matter what it is, could be job, could be eating, could be anything. No matter what it is, he's challenging them to seek first the kingdom and his righteousness, and all these things will be given to you as well. So we have to prioritize our lives. How do we determine whether our ambitions are God-directed? What's our priority? If our priority is God, if our priority is following him, and then we line everything else up behind that, we ask for God's blessings in that, if it fits with that very first priority. How do we determine whether our ambitions are God-directed or not? We seek the counsel of We seek his wisdom. I think one of the coolest things in the Old Testament is Solomon being bestowed with wisdom greater than anybody else by God because he asked for it. God made him the wisest man on earth. Now, that didn't mean everything he did was great, but he was a wise man because he asked God for it. I just think that's a beautiful, beautiful thing. Make sure our ambitions are what God directs and not just what we direct. Let's pursue God, ask God, study and learn from God what his will is. There are so many examples in the Bible, especially in the Old Testament. There are so many examples of ways not to do something. We should, I've seen people say, I have no use for the Old Testament. It's just New Testament's all I care about. Man, if you don't get some of these examples in the Old Testament, you may be harming yourself. If you don't get some ideas from how God interacts with people, you may be doing yourself a disservice. Make sure you follow God. What place does manipulation have among God's people? Well, Athaliah was a manipulative person to the point of killing folks to get what she wants. I always wondered why the people didn't rise up and say, but Athaliah, you're not of the line of David. Why did they not rise up and say, hey, wait a minute, Athaliah, it's not right for you to have the throne here? I think they were afraid of her. Why were they afraid of her? Because she killed all the royal family. I'm going to go home and be nice and try not to say anything bad about Athaliah. And so that's what happens. What place does manipulation have among God's people? 2 Timothy chapter 3. Let me begin reading in verse 1. But mark this, there will be terrible times in the last days. People will be lovers of themselves, lovers of money, boastful, proud, abusive, disobedient to their parents, ungrateful, unholy, without love, unforgiving, slanderous, without self-control, brutal, not lovers of the good, treacherous, rash, conceited, lovers of pleasure rather than lovers of God, having a form of godliness but denying its power. Wow. You think that described some of the people in Israel? Yeah. You think that describes some people today? Yeah. How does Paul finish that statement to Timothy? He says, have nothing to do with such people. Have nothing to do with such people. All of these things can be put into a basket and used as a tool in manipulation. You know, this is the manipulation toolkit that you carry around, and when you want to manipulate a situation or people or whatever, just grab that toolbox and start pulling those things out because they work. Have nothing to do with such people. Have nothing to do with people that use those kinds of tools where the result is manipulation. And don't you do it either. Manipulation. Don't be like Athaliah. Philippians 2, verse 3 and 4. Here's something good to think about. Do nothing out of selfish ambition or vain conceit. Rather, in humility, value others above yourself, not looking to your own interest, but each of you to the interest of the others. That's why I like the book of Philippians. It has some great jewels in it. Do nothing out of selfish ambition. That very first thing that he said right there may be a powerful key to avoiding the kinds of things that Athaliah got herself into. I'm convinced she was not a God lover to start with. So that's probably the foundation of it all. But do nothing out of selfish ambition. I don't know anybody in this part of the Old Testament that was more selfish and had greater ambitions than Athaliah. Our final study next week will be Korah, Dathan, and Abiram. Numbers chapter 16. I look forward to it. Y'all have a little bit of time to visit.
Good evening, Northside. It's time to begin our evening devotional, our 5-minute closeout this evening. If you're out in the foyer, come on in and enjoy the fellowship and the worship here tonight. Everybody grab your songbooks, turn to number 535. 535. We'll sing the Glory Land Way before we have our speaker this evening. 535. I'm in the way, the bright and shining way. I'm in the glory land way. Telling the world that Jesus saves today. Yes, I'm in the glory land way. I'm in the glory land way. I'm in the glory land way. Heaven is nearer and the way groweth clearer, for I'm in the glory land way. List to the call, the gospel call today. Get in the glory land way. Wanderers come home, oh hasten to obey, for I'm in the glory land way. I'm in the glory land way. I'm in the glory land way. Heaven is nearer and the way groweth clearer, for I'm in the glory land way. Onward I go, rejoicing in his love. I'm in the glory land way. Soon I shall see him in that home above. Oh, I'm in the glory land way. I'm in the glory land way. I'm in the glory land way. Heaven is nearer and the way groweth clearer, for I'm in the glory land way.
Being in theater in public school is very weird. It introduces you to a lot of different kinds of people. You get to meet these incredibly humble people that have an amazing and powerful work ethic. And then you get to meet these careless, prideful people. And you get to meet these incredibly powerful people that can change the entire mood of a room on a whim. And you also get to meet, like, deadpan, get-it-over-with types. You get to meet other Christians, non-Christians, and definitely non-Christians. And you get to work with all of them to endeavor into a common goal. The best of all of these people to work with are reliable, punctual, and competent in what they've been told that they have to do. And the worst of these people are careless, prideful, and completely unreliable. Being in that situation taught me that I wanted to avoid being that person at all costs. And that's when Proverbs 21:2 gave me an answer, so to speak. And that is as follows. Every way of a man is right in his own eyes, but the Lord weighs the heart. The Lord weighs the heart. As ridiculous as it might sound, I took that to have a double meaning. Naturally, God is all-knowing, and he can know our hearts and know that if we're being truthful to ourselves and truthful to our calling as Christians. And he can also put weight on our hearts in the form of doubt. Doubt, in the instance of catching pride, is an incredibly powerful tool. We tend to think of doubt as something that is incredibly crushing and something that we should absolutely be careful with and avoid. And that's true. But doubt is a natural emotion, and just like them all, in modesty, it can be an incredibly powerful tool. Now, one of the more difficult questions that I wanted to ask this evening is, have you ever doubted in God? And in light of that reflection, I would like to ask if, after pinpointing the exact origins of your doubts, if you have taken those in stride and searched the Word and talked to fellow Christians and expelled those doubts completely. That is a healthy use of doubt. It's perfectly healthy if you're thinking about like stabbing your friend in the back or starting gossip about someone, to take a step back and think before doing something like that. That's a great example of doubt being good. And the only caution that I might have with this is never overcommit to expelling doubts. Once you've given it enough proper care, make sure you know to move on. And it's a balance, as all things are. Now, my encouragement to this evening is to remember that God weighs the heart, and to make sure that you take all of your doubts and make sure you don't push them down, but raise them immediately to the surface and use them as an opportunity for you to grow in faith with God and grow in relations with your fellow Christians and grow in knowledge of the Word. The Lord weighs the heart. I hope that you all will never be ashamed of your doubts. Remember that at any time that you experience doubt, rather than it being something that can hinder you, it can be a beautiful opportunity for you to grow in knowledge and faith. Mark Triplett will now lead us in a closing prayer.
Let's pray. Dear God, thank you so much for this day and the beautiful weather you've blessed us with, and just the opportunity to come and study from your word midweek, to search the word and put it to use in our lives. And we just thank you for all the many blessings that we often take for granted in this country, to be able to do that and help us to go back into the world, to our jobs, to our schools, and be the hands and feet and the light to the world, and share the good news, and be with all those that weren't able to be with us tonight, and bring them back to us the next appointed time. It's in your Son's name we pray. Amen.